Good morning and happy April 11th. This is Jay Leask. I'm really excited because nature's low-key poison humanity season is here. The flowers are blooming. Everybody's allergies are kicking in, and we have records updates. It's a great day to have a community call, right?
Yeah, I was wondering where you were going with that. I was like, wow, this got dark real fast. Okay.
Right? Every time I think spring, I think records updates as I frolic through a field of tulips, Jay.
And it's the records updates that made it dark, right? No, it's
yes.
I'm looking outside, this beautiful cherry blossom right outside the window there. It's full pink, and I just, like, the minute I open a window, my sinuses just start burning, and I'm like, oh, I love this season, which I do visually. Anyway, very excited. Have a good show. You'll notice, as per use, we've got Sarah Gilbert and Rima Reyes. We don't have Jeremy Wood this week. He had a work conflict, whatever that means.
Wow,
like
judgy. Mm-hmm.
But hey, shall we get into the show, or anything you guys want to talk about?
No, I'm excited.
Let's get into it.
All right. So we're going to kick off with community events, and as per usual, we don't often have the ability to announce what's coming this month for the NARA Records user group. Sorry, the NARA M365 user group, but we do have what happened, but not 3-4 days ago. April 6th, they had Peter Alex, the head of engineering and development at the FBI Mobility Program Office, and Jody Peterson, the senior discovery counsel to the litigation branch from the FBI. So always, Jeremy constantly brags to us how great these events are. So if you have a max.gov account, you can go ahead and sign up and get the notifications for what's coming in the coming months. And then there's an interesting pattern of, like, things happening at the same time. So April 12th, the DC Power Platform meeting is doing PVA and Dynamics 365 user adoption. April 13th, there's 3 things going on. One, FedMake, the Federal Civilian Solutions Show and Share, is happening, open to all federal civilian employees. The M365 meetup for government, which they haven't announced the topic, although last month they did OpenAI and the future of intelligent conversations. And the M365 DC has not announced what they're doing yet, but last month they did Power BI analysis versus paralysis. So 3 things happening there on the 13th. On the 20th, the 2 things happening on the 20th, the Microsoft Viva in Government. There is a Microsoft Viva in Government Summit happening at aka.ms/FedViva Summit. Check the chat for the link. And there is also the Baltimore SharePoint user group, which, again, they haven't announced what they're doing yet, but they're also on the 20th. And then at the end of the month, I know there's a lot, and I'm kind of stuttering my way through it. I should have practiced. At the end of the month, the Azure Government DC meetup is happening. Again, they also have not announced what they're doing. That's Nick Giard's group, if you've been to it. In March, at the end of March, they did Art of the Possible with AI and Government. So again, very relevant, I'm going to call them hip topics, and now I feel like an old person because I improperly used the word hip. And then the thing I'm most excited about, not government focused, the MVP Summit is happening in April. So if you have any questions you want me to bring to Seattle for Office Apps and Services, for Viva, for Teams, I'm gonna be going to I'm gonna be meeting up with people from the OneNote team. Like, I'm super excited. That's April 17th through 20th. So ping me.
And obviously you're going, Jay, because you are an MVP.
I am currently,
Huzzah.
And we'll see if I still am in July when the new when. I had to fill out the annual thing, and I'm not the person who fills it out, like, as they go. And there are MVPs who definitely fill it out as they go. And for them, like, the deadline at the end of the year is like, oh, I did catch everything. And for me, it's like, oh God, what am I forgetting? So yeah.
I had to fill out the form. It's hard.
It's no. Like that. I don't appreciate the tone you're giving me, Sarah.
No, I'm kidding. I'm pretty sure it was like when it's lengthy like that, sometimes you just get to a point where you're like, I did stuff and things.
Oh yeah. Well, it's just like traveling. Literally within an hour of submitting, I went, "Oh, that's what I forgot." I knew, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the community events. We'll hopefully we put as much of that as possible in the chat. And if we are missing your community events, like please tell us. There are a ton of organizations, whether they are like think tanks or industry focused, or even companies that are putting on their own things. Oh, in fact, top of my head, a Konica Minolta company, QA at DocPoint. They have a whole records management series that they're doing one a month for, and I'll try to put the link in the chat here because I don't have it in front of me, but I'll try to grab that. So there's a ton of really good content out there, and if you have events that you want included, let us know, and we'll make sure to include them in the future.
Awesome. Okay, are we ready for roadmap updates? Because there's a lot, like a lot. So I think Jay, when you were catching up on roadmap updates, you had noticed 257 new updates to the roadmap for GCC, GCC High, and DoD. Amazing.
That's
I mean,
not
that's
a
really
small
cool.
amount, right?
No, not a small amount. I mean, I know on the team side, things are moving. We've got a lot of great things happening on Teams. So for example, and I know this has been asked for a lot, but co-organizers being able to manage breakout rooms worldwide in DoD, very, very big. Just being able to manage breakout rooms in general, having more features around that. Again, that's like such a staple, I think, of today's sort of like hybrid work environment. So that's really cool. Also, something that's been asked about, I know a lot, even when I was doing customer stuff versus partner stuff that I'm doing right now, but being able to view the 7x7 grid in GCC High and DoD when you're in a Teams meeting, I can't tell you how many, like that's been asked about for a long time. Another popular thing that it arrived and then kind of disappeared, but came back, but now it's officially here. The Elgato Stream Deck integration is now supported not only for just commercial, but it's also for GCC. If y'all don't know what the Elgato Stream Deck is, I have one. I live by it. It's amazing. It's like a little thing with there. Thank you. Show and tell.
Oh, look, there you go. Thank you, Vanna.
Mine's too short to like.
I don't even know if I'm on camera right now, but there we go.
You got it. That's it. That's exactly it. Yeah, you can add Teams like shortcut buttons to the little like button tray or whatever there to like turn on and off your camera, like mute, unmute, give some like meeting reactions, things like that. So really cool that it's available in GCC. So awesome stuff. Live transcription is now available on the web for GCC. Together mode has become available in GCC High and DoD. I don't know. You're like, yes. Do you use this?
Well, I'm excited, but is anyone actually using it? Like, I remember when it came out at the beginning of COVID, when they rolled it out, I was like, that's interesting, but is this a fad? And I feel like it's becoming a fad. Like,
really?
Are you seeing people use it? Do you use it in big meetings?
I use it.
I
use it in big meetings. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because sometimes I get distracted by people's backgrounds, or like even if they have like a solid state background or whatever, I'm just like still. And we're gonna get, we're getting ready to release like moving backgrounds, right, native to Teams too.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming in the future. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so for me, like being able to just see like the talking head in like a seat in an auditorium just makes me feel like I can focus just on their face and what they're doing, and everybody's like zoomed in the right space. At least again for me, I like it. Okay. Another thing that's coming out is Teams meetings reactions. Some people might know them as like emojis. So when you're in a meeting, you can actually react to something that somebody says by saying, clapping or heart. That is rolling out to DoD right now. I love that. I always like heart and clap a lot of what people say. It's a silent way to kind of give people your support as they're talking inside of a meeting, and they see that. They actually see that reaction on your little like profile like circle card like pop up when you do it. So it's just a nice way to give like silent like kudos. Another big thing is Whiteboard now allows you to save and share user templates. This is across worldwide, like commercial, all the way up through DoD. I will say this is phenomenal because I've been using another product up until this point to do that. And now I'm switching over to Whiteboard again, thank God. It really helps facilitate workshops, design thinking sessions, envisioning sessions. That's what I use it for. So I have like an envisioning session template that I really like. I built out my template, and then I'm able to like, recreate like whiteboards based off of that. And then I'm able to share that template with my other teammates who are like, ooh, that template looks really cool. Let me go use
Sarah,
that. So
doesn't that
that's
sound like
really
it'd be an
awesome.
amazing blog article?
I
on,
was
like...
literally just about to say, somebody should blog with me about it.
Okay. You know what? Actually, I do have a lot of experience with it. So yes, I will blog with you about this. This one I love. Like this one I'm like uber passionate about. I don't know why. I'm like sharing the wealth because I share my envisioning templates with my teammates too. So they're like, what? Okay, moving over to Viva. We now have GCC high support for Viva connections. I know a lot of people have been asking about that. And then now we also have these digest emails that you get from Viva, like a summary of everything. That's now enabled for DoD and GCC High. So Viva is slowly but surely coming into those spaces. We know everybody's been asking about it. Don't worry, it's coming. Part of it's here. So just sit tight.
Yep. And going back to the community stuff, if you want to know more about what's coming for Viva, check out that Fed Viva Summit. Because I mean, if I know that Viva is limited in Gov as compared to commercial, but they want to hear more people say we want this so that they will continue to push stuff out. There were a couple of other things. So in Purview, there were some interesting things that came out over the last month. For example, Office for Web now allows you to limit copying content to the clipboard when the content is encrypted, which you can do that with the Office app. So they're limiting that now in Office for Web. I thought this was interesting. They're now enabling complex conditions in DLP policies so that you can do things like if this condition is met and either of these conditions are met, then implement this policy. So that's I think a pretty big one, as well as recommended policy actions that are now rolling out across all government tenants. So a big deal there. And there's some improvements on the search side of things. And what I thought there's efficiency and all the standard things when someone says generically improvements, but also the ability to save your search criteria so that you can come back and return it, review it later, and to run it in the background, which I didn't realize you couldn't. So that I thought that was a big deal. And then I'm always fascinated to see when SharePoint syntax things roll out to the government stuff. So in GCC, syntax content assembly now allows you to choose fields to map to document library columns when you're publishing a modern template. So I thought that was a pretty interesting statement as well. Rima, Sarah, was there anything else on the roadmap that you thought was, there was a lot.
There was a lot.
Yeah.
I think you've covered most of it, but yeah, obviously we're going to keep updating as we go along.
Yeah, I think there was so much. I will say, like, for folks, like, just pay attention to the Microsoft 365 roadmap site.
Yep.
Filter on your cloud and just take a look to see like what's been launched, what's coming, like what's in development. Like we give like status to all those things, and I think it's just good to also stay educated, because in that way you can kind of read into it or dive into it a little bit more before that thing comes into your tenant. So it's just a good way to like stay above everything.
So real, and just, I feel like this is worth talking about almost every time. So I will put it in the chat, is the URL to the roadmap filter pattern I used. But when you go to the roadmap, which is Microsoft.com, I'm sure there's an AKMS for it, which we'll try and grab. But if you just Google Microsoft roadmap, it's typically the first response. Sorry, if you Bing it. And then when you filter, you can filter by product, release phase, and platform. But I filter by cloud instance. You've got
Same.
DoD, GCC, and GCC High, and I filter. Did you just bang? Is that what you said?
No, I said same. Why?
Same. I thought you said bang. Like I got the link. Like.
Oh my God, no.
And then there's also in the newer updated, you can filter by if it's updated in the last week. I know people check the roadmap weekly for updates. It was updated in the last month, or if it was changed. So not just if it was new, but if there was a change to it in the last month. And I say that because there was a change to one that was, I'm actually kind of curious what it meant specifically. Anonymous meeting join across cloud instances. This was, I think the date on this was or the release date on this started in 2021. But the comment in it because it's updated in the last month or changed in the last month. The comment was it has been delayed and it is being rescheduled. I'm like, well, what does that even mean? But that's, filtering on the changed value and looking at products that are particularly important to you. That's a good way to look for updates that are relevant to what you do. #same. Sorry, Sarah.
Same. Wow. Bang or whatever. Like, yeah, no, I'm not Emerald with like my BAM or anything like that. But moving on to the news from the community, BAM. We have our public sector roadmap newsletter. It's put out monthly by one of our past guests, Jesse Tedoff. We recently have Viva Insights in DoD and GCC High. It's rolled out to DoD and the GCC High environments. We have an article that goes into detail on that. We also have conversational bots and message extensions now available in DoD, first party only currently, as well as an article that we released, I believe, yesterday on achieving M2313 OMB requirements. And that is just instructional on how to remove TikTok from any GFE device and how to block network connections should you need to do that for devices that are associated with that requirement. And that's all the updates that we have besides, the million roadmap updates that we just went through.
There were a lot. And what I thought was really interesting, because Sarah, two of the things you mentioned were roadmap updates that we didn't mention during the roadmap update, because they are actually blog articles about the roadmap update. So it's not just go to the roadmap and see that there was a one-line entry about an update, but an actual, someone sat down and said, what does this mean to you? So really cool stuff going on at the community blog. All right. And thank you, Rima, for that link. There we go. The ak.ms/M365 roadmap.
Yeah, so the Gov one, the one with the Gov filters, is aka.ms/M365 Gov roadmap. So the second link, the link I just told you, the M365 Gov roadmap, that one has all the filters for DoD, GCC, and GCC High.
There we go. Did you just make that?
Yeah, I had to update it. Yeah, I hadn't done yet. Sorry.
This is what we do for you all. You come and listen to us babble for an hour, and we give you AKMS links that are custom for your needs. Look at that. All right. Well, listen. Wonderful time as always talking about the community. But let's move into the interview, which I'm really excited about. So today we have a return guest. Today we have a return guest, Erica Toelle. Erica is the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Microsoft Purview on the Purview team, and with a heavy focus on retention, records management, and all of the what do I do with this content type of things on the information management side of things. Erica, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing really great. Really glad to be here again. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Now, unfortunately, Jeremy's not with us today. Jeremy is the one who suggested you come on board because was it last month, I think, you did an update for the NARA Records user group, and he said it was really valuable, and he thinks that people who were not able to attend would be really interested in what you had to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's always great to get to speak to the government user community and really appreciate the opportunity.
Our pleasure. So let's start with a really open-ended question. There's obviously been a lot happening. Can you tell us a little bit about what's new for the government clouds on the record space?
Yeah, so these are such big announcements. I would like to mention them, even though it's a little ways out, like maybe August, end of summerish. I think it's very common to have multiple agencies sharing a single tenant, right? And we have adaptive scopes, which allows you to target retention labels and retention policies to different agencies so they can each follow their own retention schedule. But what we haven't been able to do is divide up the administration of labels and policies so that you could have a different records manager for each agency that can only create policies for their agency's content and not see everyone else's. So the exciting news is now in public preview and commercial tenants, which means it'll be available in government tenants probably about August. We are adding that ability. And the even better news is that the way we're doing it works with data loss prevention, information protection, and then I'm sure we'll probably expand to the other Purview solutions as well. So you set it up once and it works with all the compliance solutions.
That's really
huge.
great.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
big news. Yeah. I know so many like agencies have also like subcomponents or separate even departments. Like even if they're a single like large agency, each component maybe like, certain components have different, policies that they would like to implement. So that model would totally work for them. That's really cool. Wow.
Yeah, especially the ability to keep it separate, because like we're acronym to death, like in GovIT in general. And I'm willing to bet there's some stuff that's like so niche to even just one department. And it's good to be able to differentiate that.
Yeah, and the exciting part is I think this is one of the times where Microsoft really got it right, because we're using a construct called administrative units in Azure Active Directory. And those are used throughout all the M365 solutions. So we're actually doing something cohesively rather than everyone going off and inventing their own solution for it.
That is really cool. I will immediately go read up more on that one, because that is a conversation that well. I've been having a lot with various federal and defense customers. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah, and then the other big piece of news that we talked about in our user group is our simulation mode for automatically applied retention labels. So we all know it's a really great idea to test things before putting it in production, but that wasn't possible before this feature. So you're able to...
This is like the new Power Automate stuff, right? The integration.
We have that too, but this
gotcha.
one is
okay.
You create a policy, you set how you want it to be deployed, and then you start a simulation. It'll give you reports about what it would apply to what locations.
Oh, wow.
And with the right permissions, you can actually dive into like what exact documents would get the label as well.
Wow.
It's like a test mode. Like I built this rule and let's see how good. Oh, that's not what I meant it to do. And so you get the opportunity. Oh, that's neat. Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually a cool way, yeah, because like you would want to test before you apply it, because for all you know, like you added one line in wrong, or you need to be more specific, and you don't want it to be too, I don't know, forever expanding or anything. That is neat. I like that. And then speaking of that, since I interjected, because I thought that's where we were going already, we've heard that there are integrations with Power Automate now, and what are the integrations that are with Power Automate, and how do they work within this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Power Automate integrations also one coming July, August-ish to the government environments. But we have two ways that we can integrate with Power Automate. So the first is after the retention period's over, you can run a Power Automate workflow. For those not familiar with Power Automate, you can, for example, route the approval to whomever you want based on any metadata that's in Microsoft 365. You could have a custom dashboard Power App if you would like that shows them custom SharePoint metadata to help them make the review decision, or helps users take only the actions you as the records manager or the admin want them to take. It really just opens up a whole world of customizations for what you can do after the retention period. But then the other exciting one that we just announced last week at Microsoft Secure is we also just added an action where you can apply a retention label in any Power Automate workflow. So this is important, right? Because a lot of people have invested in using Power Automate to drive common processes. A lot of times records are created with these processes. So why not just apply the retention label right there instead of relying on some other method to do it?
Oh, that's so cool. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. It's been an exciting couple months, I think. Yeah.
So a question, so around the simulation mode, what like why would I want to use it? I know we talked about like testing and all that stuff. Like, do you see that as like a big ask? Like, do government agencies say, hey, like we really want to understand like where this label applies? Like how are they asking, or how have you seen government agencies kind of like think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot's at stake, right? If you don't label or don't put the right retention policy on something, or the wrong policy, it can have some really serious implications, right? Something's deleted too early is usually the main concern, but more and more, what if something's deleted way too late? And so what this does is just gives us some way to have more confidence in what we're doing, because once it gets deployed to production, it becomes much, much harder to roll anything back. I mean, that's the nature of why we test before production, right? It's true of any technology. Once it's out there in the real world, it's going to have consequences.
Oh my gosh, I never thought about that. You're right. Yeah, because if you apply like a policy for real and something has like a certain disposition schedule or something goes, wrong with that piece of data that was like super, super important. Well, I never thought about that. You're right. Yeah, because there's so many implications of what if we got it wrong the first time. And it's you're right, absolutely amazing to test. Wow. Okay, thank you. That really clears it up for me. Thanks.
So, what do you have any? We talked about syntax in the roadmap. Do you have any updates relating to what's happening on the syntax side?
Yeah. Well, I kind of look at syntax through the lens of compliance. I'm not on the syntax team, so I don't want to steal any of their announcements. But there's a couple exciting things they announced at Ignite last fall that really do have some records management implications. So one of the first ones I think of is archive. Although for the true archivist out there, let's call it inactive digital content.
Okay.
But sometimes you get to a stage in the life cycle where maybe you're past the point where anyone needs it for any business reference purposes, but it's not time to send it to NARA yet. And you just kind of want to park it somewhere like low cost, low risk, because SharePoint storage can be a little expensive sometimes. And so the SharePoint team announced an archive offering where you can put it into a lower cost tier of SharePoint storage, with the understanding it's not something you're going to be accessing all the time. So that was huge for us because the archives are still managed with the security and compliance features that you would expect from Microsoft 365.
Okay. Yeah, because I definitely like that conversation as well. The if we're going to be keeping things for a long period of time and it takes up a lot of space, we do have a number of customers who are talking about, hey, we're getting close to those limits that we have, the storage limits. So that's a good thing to hear as well.
Yeah.
It's awesome that we've come that long of a way. I remember one of my first jobs was a bank clerk, and I actually just lived in the file room that they had in a bank. And like this was like, I'm 37, so it was a while ago, but like their process was so convoluted for like storing physical files in archives and what you had to do. And we've come a long way with stuff being digital. Like, it's awesome what we can do now. But I digress. Anyways, how do these features align that we're talking about? How do these features align with the license levels? Meaning, like, do you need G5 or a security and compliance add-on to G3 to get some of these features? Like, what is in what bucket, I guess I should say.
Yeah. So I'm not going to pretend I don't want to talk about Microsoft syntax licensing because, again, I'm not on that team and I'm not the expert, and I would hate to spread any incorrect information. But for the security and compliance side, there's no special licensing from our perspective if we just consider it another source of content. So the same would apply. Yeah. There's a couple other cool things Syntax did announce, if I could mention. Digital signatures. So a lot of times you don't want to have to use another tool to run to gather digital signatures. So they added that ability as well. And then I guess this is kind of licensing related, but they are offering now a consumptive model instead of a per user model, which I think is really great for records managers, because if you're interested in using something like syntax to analyze your content, help categorize it, extract metadata from the content, you can now do that on a per page level rather than having to figure out how many users to license, which I think can be a bit more flexible in most situations.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. I know this, so I know like for the Power Automate, is it a premium connector for the compliance piece? Is that how that works, by the way?
Yeah, so there's one compliance connector for all of the Microsoft Purview solutions. So like communication, compliance, insider risk management also leverage this. It is a premium connector. So I've learned a little bit more about Power Automate licensing than I knew a year ago, but my understanding is one of the ways you can license it is per user, and that you could always, especially in records management situations, it might be more secure and better to use like a service account to run some of these workflows, since you want it to trigger at the end of the retention period. Sometimes that's 5 years after you set it up. Maybe that person's left the organization. So instead of running it through their user account, if you use a properly secured service account, that's just for running this workflow, you could license that service account for the premium connector and have it do its thing.
Yeah,
nice.
properly secured service account is a can of worms in and of itself, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it's something you definitely want to work with your IT department on.
And then and then Erica, if you wouldn't mind, we'd love to hear. So we've got a bunch of new features coming out. It's been a year since we've talked to you. This space, the records management space in both the state and local, in states like Florida where they released the sunshine laws, in the Fed space with M1921 and the predecessors to that, there's been a lot of question of like, how do we actually do this? So there's a lot of new features. Do you have any good stories? Obviously we can't necessarily name the customer, but do you have any good stories of where they've been able to roll out some of these features to meet some of those laws, those specialized laws that have rolled out?
Yeah, I'm gonna, like you said, speak a bit generally. I've observed that the projects that are most successful start with the records manager really getting clear on what exactly the law says by working with their legal teams or other people qualified to make those calls. And what they don't do is try to make the laws more complicated than they actually are. Because I think sometimes we get a little, we're trying to protect the organization from risks, right?
Yep.
And so we think, it's to do that, I should be a little bit more extreme than I need to be. When in fact, oftentimes what you're doing in that case is making it impossible for people to do their jobs, to collaborate and be productive. And so I think the most successful projects have done a great job of walking that line and putting the user and the mission of the agency first, and then figuring out how to manage the risks through records management within that context, if that makes sense. And then along those lines, the most successful projects, the records managers collaborating with IT, with the various business units, and figuring out how to integrate records management like in the place people do their work, whether that's working in teams and using in-place records management through that, or using something like Power Automate to, again, automate things that people were doing manually before, and just inserting records management along the way so that the user is just doing their job and following the process, and they don't care records management's happening. And that combination of things is just making, number one, higher quality information to help the mission, but then also higher quality information that's categorized appropriately, managed appropriately with the least amount of risk.
Yeah, we have a very similar conversation with customers. It doesn't matter if you're talking about security or records, or storage or sprawl. Any of these problems are solved by having a process that catalogs your workspaces and gives people the ability to give business context around those workspaces. Your team, what is this team used for? Who's it going to be used by? Is it short term or long term? Do you expect any kind of records or highly secure information? And then you can set policy, you can inventory it, you can automate all sorts of things to keep the user from having to think about it. And that's great advice. Yeah, love it. Awesome.
Yeah, I think you just reminded me of another thing that success criteria, and that is letting go of perfect. Like you will never.
Ooh, that's a good one.
You'll never be able to like analyze
Snaps
everything.
for letting go of perfect.
Like it's just there's too much data these days. It's not going to happen. And so, Jay, by doing what you said, it allows information custodians, records managers to really hone in on where the highest risk, highest value data might be and focus their time on dealing with that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have that conversation a lot too, which is, you have two options. You can create the perfect system and never implement it because creating that takes forever, or you can start now with the thing that you can define, and then over time you can enhance it. You can add more rules, you can add more data sources, you can change what you're protecting. Like you can always add to it, but if you wait until it's perfect, absolutely right, you'll never get there.
Yeah, and you learn so much by putting it out there and getting feedback, right? It's gonna change your requirements.
Yeah. It's like the I can't remember who originally told this story, but it was basically the rule of like making a million. I don't know if you guys have heard this, a million like first pots, for example, like where there was it was just a story post of like, it was a ceramics class of you could take as much time as you want, but you can only make one perfect pot / vase, or you can make as many iterations as you want, but like this is the date that the final has to be turned in. And they found that the people that like just kept making the first pots or whatever did better than these other people that spent all this time trying to like find the perfect method and whatnot, because the others actually used like practical application and got the experience, versus these other people were just talking about it and obsessing over it. And it's better to like build along the way than it is to just like stall yourself out for months.
Yep. Oh, that's great. Well, Erica, as we wrap, first of all, thank you. This has been a really fun conversation. I appreciate the tech and the policy, the process at the end. Any recommendations as to where people should go to continue to see these kinds of updates as they come out?
Yeah, I think the best place is our blog. So I'll put it in the notes, but aka.ms/DLM/blog.
Okay.
And then also DLM/roadmap to get our roadmap updates, like a specific filtered view. You'll have to set the filter for the government clouds in addition, but it'll get you started. And then I can include some other links as well for test environments, trials, things like that.
Ooh. It's like
and also where we would go to like do learning for it as well. That would be cool. Well, I know we have Microsoft Learn, but like the specific learning paths is what I mean.
Absolutely, yeah. DLM/learn.
Look at you with all these quick ones. Love it.
I made them really easy to remember for myself.
Oh, that's
I hear
fantastic. That's awesome. Well, Erica, really excited about today's conversation. Thank you so much. For those of you wondering what's coming, so this is April 11th, our records conversation. This episode will release as a podcast next week, which we're really excited about. If you haven't subscribed to our podcast, we are releasing 2 episodes per month, the monthly recording and a reach back into our archives of a interview that held over time. So we won't reach back to something that's highly technical where the technology is out of date, but especially conversations about policy, conversations about tech that is still completely relevant. Those things are rolling out, and we actually have an episode on May 2nd coming out about bots and about Power Platform framework type stuff. So really, even though it's a 2-year-old conversation, it's still absolutely relevant. And then next month, we're going to talk about Teams Premium.
Yes,
So-
I'm so excited about that. Everybody's been asking me about that. It's going to be huge.
It is. So listen, make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you're conversing with us in the chat. Join us in the tech community that Sarah runs, and go find Erica on LinkedIn and tell her how amazing this conversation was. So thank you, Erica, for joining us. Rima, Sarah, thank you as always. And to
Thank you.
our many listeners, thank you for joining us today.